Hello and welcome to the birth of a new dimension. I'm your host, Aurora, and I will be with you for this 1 hour as we explore consciousness. So whatever plan I had to speak about today changed when I read a posting from a friend on Facebook that really made me wish to speak about death and bring less fear into the discussion. So, first of all, I'd like to tell you that I have died, but I did not die. Clearly, I am still here speaking to you. I have a biological, corporeal form, and I have life force, so I am not dead. However, this biological body did undergo the death process. So sometimes when I first meet someone, I gloss over this and I say, I had a near-death experience that changed my life. If I'm really being accurate and impeccable with my language, I wouldn't say that it was near death. I would say that it was death. So let's get into this. The previous occupant of this physical biological body died on October 8th of 2001 at age 27. That is fact. The biological processes that supported consciousness in this body ceased to flow for a certain amount of time. Another way of saying it is that the harmonic pattern of energy as it flows, which is what upholds what we would define as life, those harmonic patterns were disrupted, making life not possible within this biological container. And you can say, Aurora, that does not make sense because clearly you are here speaking to us through this biological container. Well, here is what happened. The biological body was attacked with non-physical energy that affected the physical body, that shut down blood flow to certain areas of the brain, and also non-physical energy flow in the harmonic pattern that upholds life in the universe, in the cosmos rather, and that caused the disruption of consciousness. The original occupant of this body, the original temporal ego, died. She was unmade, like a bell that was reverberating. Those reverberations were stopped. They were dampened. And that level of consciousness doesn't exist anymore. However, the physical body was still a viable container for consciousness if certain, we would say, magical or miraculous things were done to it. So a force field that is called the grace of God came and surrounded and interpenetrated this body after the body died and the original inhabitant, original temporal ego left or could no longer be supported in this body. The grace of God is an energetic matrix, or imagine it as a woven cloth of light that not only surrounded the body but interpenetrated every cell and kept this container as a viable container, even though theoretically it was no longer a viable container. That's a miracle that happened. And that was sustained so that this consciousness, Aurora, could inhabit the body and create a temporal ego known as Aurora. So when I first came into the body, I was simply pure, unclothed consciousness, like when consciousness comes into a fetus that is born or comes into an infantile physical human form. I was simply consciousness. I didn't yet have a name for myself. I didn't yet have a set of habits or preferences that would describe me as an individual as opposed to being connected to the ocean of consciousness. So, for example, I didn't say, my name is this, my favorite color is this, I live at this house address, these are my things. None of that was truthful. None of that was applicable to my state of mind. And over time, the personality of Aurora was constructed. The ego, the sense of self, the sense of who I am in this world. So all of that is backstory so that I can tell you that death is not the end, and I've been there from personal experience. All of that is so that I can tell you that you do not have to be afraid. So let's go now a little bit into ancient history. In ancient history, there were mystery schools. These were schools that kept alive the information that came to us from what we would state, what would be accurately described as the culture of Atlantis. So the culture of Atlantis spanned thousands and thousands of years, just like the ancient Egyptian went through ancient Egypt, just like the history of ancient Egypt, which went through different periods and dynasties, so too did ancient Atlantis go through different periods of culture, some of which were higher than others. Eventually the culture fell. This is all galactic history. P.S. I will be doing a webinar that's all about galactic history coming up next week. You can check it out on Facebook. This is all about why consciousness fell and why consciousness now needs to ascend. In Atlantis, in that era on Earth, death had not been invented yet, or death as we now know it had not been invented yet. So the biological bodies that we use as containers for consciousness were originally designed to be able to last for hundreds, if not thousands of years. These bodies were designed to be able to be, first of all, in a constant state of rapport with higher intelligence. The sun and the consciousness that comes from less dense realms, or let us say the stars and the network of consciousness that connects the stars and connects the galactic center, which is the central emanator, that system of consciousness arrives to us from a less dense realm and informs the level of the third dimension that we are currently experiencing. It's like saying light comes from the sun, our nearest star, and illuminates the objects that we see around us in the material world, giving us information about what we are experiencing. Light also comes to us from the source, from our crown chakra. It enters into our non-physical energy body and circulates through a system of being stepped down. Just like electricity has to come from a central power station but go through transformers and be stepped down until it is in a format that you can plug your home computer into. If you plugged your computer directly into the power station, it would blow all of the circuits. This is the same with your organic biological computer. If you plugged directly into the sun, you would fry your circuits. So the chakras of your body are like electrical transformers, quote unquote, and they create a beneficial diminishing of the power that is coming into the body. Beneficial diminishing. This is not a bad thing. It is a good thing. Take the energy that is in an extremely high state and bring it into a slightly lower state so that you can ingest it safely and appreciate it, okay? So one is connected to the higher network of consciousness through not only the innate divine connection, but also through food, through what one ingests in terms of objects from the external realm. So this would be food, water, medicine, breath, all of that. In ancient Atlantis, our bodies were designed to receive everything that we needed directly from solar or stellar consciousness, directly from light. And stars or the sun are emanators of light. At that point in human development, death did not exist, and everybody ate light, and that is what our bodies were designed to do. Then, through galactic history, through events that happened, humans' bodies changed, and humans' connection to the source was diminished, and humans began to eat physical objects in their alimentary tract in order to stay alive. And this is like going from a clean burning engine that gets all of its energy and information from a laser to retrofitting that apparatus into being a steam engine. which runs on combustion. That is what the biological body does presently. It runs on combustion. You eat food. Food is caloric energy, which is literally burned in your body and is released as infrared heat, caloric output, the movement of your muscles, breath, and poop, and also neurological energy, the electrical impulses that flow throughout your neurology and give you a sense of being alive and being awake. It's different, though, than the subtle energies that flow through the subtle energy centers of the body. And all of this, just to understand that eating food produces a lot of wear and tear on the physical body and shortens the body's lifespan considerably. So, when humanity changed, and the change was very sudden and very traumatic and had to do with events that were a diminishing of consciousness. Humans went on surface of Earth from having very high consciousness to having very low consciousness. It was the invention of disease, and it was the invention of death as opposed to ascension. Let us now make this distinction. And I'll bring it around to my personal story, because I have said I had a death experience. I came into this body. I did not say that I ascended. So here's a good barometer for any would-be messiahs or saviors or channelers or people who are bringing you information. If you have a physical body, you're not an ascended master. To ascend means that you are no longer in the physical realm. It's like saying you graduated from the physical realm. To say that you graduated but you're still here does not make sense. There is no such thing as homecoming queens in the world of ascension. You do not graduate and then go back to your alma mater and tell everyone how great it is. I'm sorry, that doesn't happen. And the reason why that doesn't happen is because we are undergoing a process of consciousness refinement and aligning of the chakras so that your consciousness can exit the wormhole. So now, if you will refer to some of my images that are on the Birth of a New Dimension Facebook homepage. So that feed is on the ucy.tv FRL page. If you look all the way to the left, you'll see a thing that you can click on, and there are several images there. This is how I get artwork onto the radio. So usually I paint a picture with colors and my paintbrush. I spent the morning painting, and now I'm sitting out here in the sunlight recording this. During the rest of the time, I paint images with my voice. But some things are hard to show with my voice, so if you look at those images, you'll see some of them are shaped like a circus tent, a vortex cut into cross-section, and the peak of the circus tent is the exit to infinity. This way to the exit, and the way that you get out of this constant, this system of refinement that is shaped like a vortex and that is refining your consciousness, is by learning all of the lessons that are necessary so that you can have a slender ego and go through that wormhole. When I say slender, what I mean is not holding on to any of the emotional detritus of the past and having only the personality characteristics that are appropriate to bring with you on a journey of consciousness into the ocean of consciousness. So, let's say this. Some aspects of self are temporal. They are only relevant to this time and this place. If you say, I am the person who wakes up in the morning and does the laundry at this house, that is only relevant to you when you live at this house. Because if you move to a different time and place, you live in a different house, you do your laundry in a different way, you might not even have laundry, you might not even wear clothing. This is just a simple example of where people derive their identity from. They say, this is my name, this is the house that I live in, these are the meaningful or meaningless activities that I perform every day, and that is who I am. That is not who you are. You are the being that is eternal, who you would be in every circumstance or every context. So my creativity and artistry is part of my eternal personality. If you dropped me into upstate New York, or if you dropped me onto Antarctica, or if you dropped me onto the surface of Ganymede, I would find a way to be creative. I'd look for materials, I'd get an idea, I would create art out of whatever I find. It's a basic personality characteristic. So these are the types of characteristics that can go through the wormhole and come with us through ascension. Most personality characteristics are like sandbags. They weigh you down and prevent you from being able to rise higher into these otherworldly realms of consciousness. So now let's get into death and consciousness. In this time and place, this current cultural matrix within which I find myself embedded, there's a lot of fear about death, and there's very little preparation or teaching about death. So in previous eras, there were mystery schools of ancient Egypt, which grew into mystery schools of ancient Greece. So the mystery schools of ancient Egypt kept alive a lot of the information that came directly from Atlantis. Some of it is symbols of what would be called sacred geometry. Some of it is the use of entheogens. These are psychedelic plant teachers in order to achieve higher mental states of consciousness. And some of the ancient Egyptian mystery schools had to do with undergoing rites of initiation, where one learns to transform or transcend fear. Because fear is a blockage, and when we begin to enter these levels of consciousness, we need to be able to transcend the blockages, literally the membranes that separate layers of density. And those membranes are experienced as fear. If you have ever taken LSD or an entheogen or ayahuasca, then you probably have had that experience of coming upon one of these boundaries. As you come upon the boundary, it is a boundary of persona, the sense of self, of individuation. There is an increasing sense of fear. Just like when a garbage truck is backing up and it's getting closer and closer to an object, beep, 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 it's getting closer and closer. And this is because whenever one transcends one of these fear barriers, there is a literal death of an aspect of the ego, because the ego exists because of ignorance and what it doesn't know and what it hasn't done. And when you transcend those levels of fear and those barriers, the aspect of self that was afraid and that based its sense of self on its ignorance and lack of knowing can no longer exist. It is a death of that aspect of self, and of course a birth of, or a continuation of, your true eternal consciousness. These initiatory experiences were undergone as a matter of course for everyone in the ancient world. So in Atlantis, this was like learning how to tie your shoes. You learned how to create your Merkaba. Merkaba, this comes from ancient Atlantis by way of the ancient Egyptian mystery schools. Merkaba, meaning light body vessel. So the Egyptians believed in the Ka and the Ba. These are aspects of self, one being the physical body, one being more like an insubstantial body, and then there is, of course, the eternal, endless consciousness. All of this was preparation for the day that a person would die. So in ancient Atlantis, everybody ascended. Nobody had to go through the washing machine over and over and over. That is because it's like there was perfect GPS, perfect God positioning system. When you are connected to the divine, you don't wander on your path. You come into the physical realm, have physical experiences, and then after hundreds or thousands of years, slow your breath, slow your heartbeat, and there were different options of ascension. There was a total kindling of the physical matter into non-physical. Kind of like spontaneous human combustion, if that is something that you could imagine. The physical body instantaneously transforming into non-physical without undergoing any of the other intermediate state changes. So going from solid directly into heat and light and consciousness and non-physical energy. Then, of course, there is a slightly stepped down version of that, where a person ascends, meaning their consciousness achieves the totality and They achieve unity, and they are living in an eternal, endless state of consciousness. However, their physical body remains in the physical realm, and it might undergo some miraculous changes that would leave behind relics. So, for example, in the realm of Tibetan Buddhism is different than regular Buddhism, which originated from India. Tibetan Buddhism, eventually, when Buddhism started in India, it was brought into Tibet, which was undergoing the type of religious worship that was in Tibet at that time. We could say it is paganism. It was more of an interaction with spirit beings. The humans of Tibet had all sorts of interactions with both angels and devils, or higher dimensional beings of all different flavors. And a wonderful being named Padmasambhava, a magical creature in itself, this being took the teachings of Buddhism and brought them to Tibet. And Padmasambhava, I say a magical being because this is a being that did not have parents, that simply materialized into the physical realm, and was able to subdue the demons and the demonic religion or spiritual worship of ancient Tibet, and created what we know as Tibetan Buddhism. And that form of Buddhism has within it interwoven the changed personalities of the former demons, because Padmasambhava was able to transform the consciousness of these distorted creatures, lower vibrational creatures, and help them to transcend and ascend and become their true divine form. And when he did that, those now divine beings, not demons, not lower perturbations, but the truly ascended form of those beings, became protectors and helpers and guides as part of Tibetan Buddhism. So there's another lovely combination here, or tying together of cultures. From that Tibetan Buddhism, Padmasambhava wrote what is known as the Bardo Thodol. Sorry for my pronunciation, folks. This is known as the translation, the Tibetan Book of the Dead. And it is like a handbook for what to do upon exiting the body. Padmasambhava was trying to give people preparation for what to do. Then he regretted it, and he said, this is powerful information. I need to make it secret because people aren't ready for it. And the information went into hiding and was kept alive by monks and the people of the Far East for a very long time, until the 20th century, when it was time for all of the ancient mystery teachings to come to the forefront so that the people of the 20th century could have access to them. Because the people of the 20th century do not, and did not, or haven't up until this point, have not had mystery schools and shamanic teachers to draw upon. People in the 20th century drop acid and go to raves, or sit in their bedroom in a beanbag chair in darkness and have their own individual trip. And this is so because the entheogenic substances are outlawed, and it is literally an illegal act to change your mind and prepare for your death. The nice combination of the Tibetan Book of the Dead, or the connection that I was going for, is also what is known as the Egyptian Book of the Dead, but that is a mistranslation. If you walk away from this radio broadcast today with one piece of information, please retain the idea that the Egyptian Book of the Dead has been misnamed. It was actually called the Egyptian Book of Coming Forth into Day. And it was also a set of practices and rituals and incantations similar to the Bardo Thodol that were to be said and performed over the recently deceased, over their remains, and towards their consciousness on its trajectory, in order to remind the recently deceased of their power, of their true identity, and of their destination. So the ancient Egyptian mystery schools taught the initiates by giving them psychedelics, guiding them through their own fear barriers and giving them initiatory experiences, such as what happened at, I believe it is the Osirian, the Temple of Osiris, where there were these, like an obstacle course made of water, these obstacles that the initiate had to get through. And some of the obstacles had hungry crocodiles in them. And there were other aspects where you had to swim underneath barriers. All of that was teaching how to get past fear, how to get past barriers as a preparation for the interior journey. So now we get to the 20th century, where there is a social stigma and a social taboo against entheogenic exploration and against those mind states. Not only is it illegal to possess those substances, it is socially taboo to enter into certain mental mind states. The euphoric, the numinous, the loss of boundary state that is concomitant with the psychedelic experience has been up until this point in human culture at this moment. I'm talking about industrialized 20th century human culture, and now we're in the 21st century. I recognize that, and things are changing. But I'm speaking about the culture that we're just exiting out of, and that most recent period. That was a realm where it was considered to be bad morals to achieve certain states of consciousness. That a good quote-unquote person is sober, meaning that they maintain their alert, problem-solving, rational state of mind. They do not enter into the imaginatory. When I said numinous, I meant cloud-based, non-linear thought forms. The realms of saints and mystics have been frowned upon for people in the 20th century. And so, as I stated, the exploration of those realms has been a personal journey and or a criminal activity. When people gathered in raves in the 20th century, it was not a socially sanctioned thought experiment. It was outsider activity. And so this is to characterize all of this activity as very do-it-yourself, very DIY, do-it-yourself. People have not had guidance, people have not had shamans, and people have also had access to all sorts of substances of a variety of qualities. The qualitative difference between a substance that occurs naturally and one that has been manufactured with chemicals is very severe. These are huge changes in the thought structure that will happen from what one is ingesting. So I'm saying that there is a huge difference in the levels of consciousness that are achieved between, let's say, eating a plant or eating a mushroom that has not been adulterated or changed or processed, and eating a plant or eating a fungus or something like that, where certain chemicals have been taken out and certain chemicals have been changed. So this must be understood, that pharmaceuticals and a lot of the synthetic chemicals are not giving the same levels of consciousness raising and consciousness expansion that unadulterated whole plant medicines give. Trying to say with all of that is that in the modern world, if a person decides to become a thought criminal and go to a rave and begin to explore areas of consciousness that would have, in other societies and other times and places, it would have been your job to do those things. It would have been your job to society and to yourself to undergo an initiatory rite. In ancient Greece, it was known as the Eleusinian Mysteries, to drink the psychedelic or entheogenic brew and then have this experience that really will bring you towards maturity of your consciousness. I wanted to say spiritual maturity, but let's say to bring you into another level of your consciousness. That would have been considered a very good and right thing to do. But in the 20th century, late 20th century especially, it is considered a criminal activity, and it is something that people do in secret or in hiding and on their own. And it's also something that is done without guidance or preparation. It's kind of like saying, if you've never had a swimming lesson, you have never watched a show about surfing, but you are given a surfboard and pointed in the general direction of the ocean and said, go on out there, go surfing. You can do it. It's been done. Just knowing that it can be done is definitely part of the challenge, and also there are skills, there's techniques, there's information that can help. This is the information that is contained within the Tibetan Book of the Dead and the Egyptian quote-unquote Book of the Dead, or the Book of Coming Forth into Day. All of the entheogenic experiences are meant to be smaller in magnitude, preparatory experiences for one's coming out party, the final denouement, your debutante ball in Earth's surface human society, especially of the past, and formal society. When a young woman reached age, she would have her coming out ball, where she was presented to society, and she would meet all of the important people in the world and had to learn customs and manners and the formal dance steps in order to be able to be a part of this higher formal society. Well, death is the human Earth surface culture. Death is your coming out. Death is your debutante ball. It is when you come out of the physical plane and begin to enter and circulate amongst the adults, quote unquote, amongst the more refined levels of consciousness which exist. So let's get back into ancient Atlantis. In ancient Atlantis, before the fall, everybody ascended. So coming into the physical body was like going on a journey, like going on a vacation. It's like saying, I live in New York, but I'm going to fly to Greece, visit Greece for a week, and then fly back to New York. So in the past, coming into the physical realm was like this. I have a non-physical consciousness presence. I want to go into the physical realm. I go into the physical realm. I live there for a lifetime of my choosing. Then I leave, and I go back to the non-physical realm. When I say none of this going on endless cycles through the washing machine thing, this is the idea of being caught in loops of consciousness. And humans have been caught in loops of consciousness and unable to break free with their own will for about the past 10 or 12,000 years. This is all about the fall of consciousness and no longer being in control of your life trajectory, not being in control of your genes, not being in control of your thoughts, not being in control of where your consciousness is going. All of that changed on October 8th of 2001. I am happy to report to you that since the invention of the flying rainbow lasagna, you now have control over your life trajectory. You don't have to cycle endlessly through the washing machine and then finally go back to source. You can go back to source in this lifetime. That does not only apply to you, this also applies to all of the beings whom have been stuck in the interstices since they left source in an unloving fashion. This again goes to galactic history. If you're not familiar with this, please take the galactic history webinar with me next week, where I describe in detail the consciousness beings that left the source not on a bridge of love, as you and I did, but using technology, an artificial way of getting away from source. And technology became like their god and became the crutch or compensatory method that was used by these beings so that they could exist without their own innate divine connection. And now we are experiencing, quote unquote, the cosmic showdown between beings who have an innate divine connection, such as me and you, beings that are listening to this broadcast, and beings that don't have their own innate divine connection, beings that occupy the interstices or a non-physical realm, where they eat the negative outpourings of physical beings because they cannot eat pure love. And those beings got stuck in that position due to galactic history. All of this is politics. And I'll tell you this, if we use the analogy of World War II, World War II on Earth's surface was created because of all sorts of socio-economic, political factions and factors. Now let's say that you're just a little kid of 10 years old living in Germany in World War II, and you simply want to have enough food to eat. You don't really care about all of the political factions. You don't really care about who rose to power, the laws that they created, their belief systems, their value structures, and why they did what they did. All you really care about is getting a chocolate bar or an apple or whatever is going to alleviate your hunger. That is the analogy of humans on Earth right now. Humans on Earth's surface are like little kids, just trying to get enough food, just trying to get enough basic resources and subsist and live. And there's all of this cosmic backstory. There are many forces that are enormous. The scale is enormous of what is happening. And it all boils down to each one of our individual journeys. You wish to have enough food to eat. You wish to have your house. You wish to have good health. You wish to have your own innate divine connection and be able to return to source. You do not wish to have to undergo endless torture where you go through I call it the washing machine, through the refinery of life experience until you finally get purged and get to go to where it is happy and comfortable. And even the belief system and the program telling you that that is necessary, this is what I'm talking about. It's a false program. It would not have been taught to you in ancient Egypt that it is necessary for you to undergo, 10,000 subsets of this life before you're allowed to finally exit this life. Like that's crazy to think that. However, that is the present program, that you're just going to have to go through and explore every single possible iteration before you get out of this game. So it must be understood, I don't treat it like a game because the consequences are real. If you chop off your foot, it's real blood, it's real pain. It's not a game. A game implies that there are not real consequences. However, what's accurate about using the word game is that there are rules. The Book of the Dead, the Tibetan Book of the Dead, the Egyptian Book of the Dead, these were attempts to give you, as Earth surface humans, the rules to the game, so that you can play it more effectively, so that you can win. The way that you win is by having a good death. So this is teaching from ancient Mexico, from ancient Japan. The idea of being a warrior of consciousness has nothing to do with picking up a sword and actually physically fighting people. When you are a warrior of consciousness, you observe your own consciousness and you fight against the tendencies of, let's say, lower ego or lower vibrational consciousness, so that you can focus your attention on that wormhole that allows you to ascend and go into a higher dimensional state. When you get to that higher dimensional state, and every single one of us will get there, this is the miracle of being alive in this time and place. Yes, because of the creation of the flying rainbow lasagna, everybody now has available to them the capacity to ascend in this lifetime. You do not have to go through endless iterations, going through the washing machine to be able to ascend. Now we have as our possibility, when I say ascension, it is like saying deathless death. So I began this whole recording today telling you about my death experience. My death experience was real. It was not merely a metaphor or a near death. The cells of this body actually died. And I recently was working with a very gifted Reiki healer. She's not only a Reiki healer, she also does chiropractic and craniosacral therapy. Her name is Heliana. And Heliana helped me, Aurora, to release the residue, the emotional residue that had been imprinted on this body. at the moment of death of the previous occupant. And the way I can describe it, it felt like anguish. I could feel her anguish. That was literally her last breath. And that was an imprint that was on the cellular structure of this body. It not only was an emotional imprint, it left a neurological deficit. And since that imprint has been removed, or resolved, or transcended, I now have greater access to my right eyebrow and my right leg and other aspects of my neurology within my cranium that I didn't have access to before. So this is, first of all, to share the power of healing, that it is possible whatever negative trauma happened to you in your mind, body, spirit, etc., it can be healed and transcended. I can tell you from firsthand experience that injuries, emotional, spiritual, and body injuries, can be rectified. And this is the miracle. This is what makes you and I, as a living biological organism, more and different than something like a car or a computer. My car, unfortunately, is not self-healing. If I get a flat tire, my tire doesn't just get better in a week with a bit of rest and, some good vitamins. But my human body, if it gets cold, if I give it vitamins and rest for a week, it'll get better. That's the miracle of having a biological body. And it's also why beings that don't have bodies, these spirit beings, those who did not die well, those who do not have a mouth with which to eat the food of love in the afterlife, those beings covet your body. They covet your senses, they covet your capacity to eat, and many beings in the non-physical realm are envious of your capacity to act in the physical realm. So having real estate in the physical realm is a very powerful position. And also it diminishes your eyesight. Like when you're in the physical, you have less perspective. It is just what it's like. It's like if you live in a valley, you don't have the same perspective that you would have if you lived on a mountaintop. And there are values to living in both places. So for a very long time, humans have been programmed to think that being an ego and living in the physical realm makes you less than a non-physical being. An angel or a beautiful spirit person or someone that lives in the non-physical realm. No, you are equally as valuable and your journey is equally as valid. And I've said this before and I will say it again. The order of operations in terms of evolution does not go human, angel, God. It goes angel, human, God. And the reason for this is that all of us have been existing in the angelic realm. This is the realm of pure mind, where everything has already been set up. It is not the realm of uncertainty or creation or possibility. The realm of dense matter where we are and the subatomic realm, those are the realms of possibility and probability and creativity. When you're rolling the dice, what determines what happens is on the subatomic level, the tiny, tiny, tiny realm. What is happening with your mind and your consciousness when you are creating and you're in a physical realm. This is the magic. This is the miracle. Being able to make something new, being able to make a flying rainbow lasagna, that was a miraculous event. Anytime you think a new thought, you create a new painting, you make a new song, you make a new poem. Anytime you make a new recipe with food, you are making a miracle. None of those things, none of those combinations could have happened if you simply existed in the angelic realm, the realm of pure consciousness, not in the physical realm of matter. In order to truly ascend and become God, we all had to become humans. It is profound. It is why I am here. You can ask this question, Aurora, why did you walk into a human body? Why didn't you stay in the realm of pure divinity? Why didn't you wave your magic wand and make things happen? And the answer is because in order to be powerful in the third dimension, I had to get a third-dimensional body. There are many beings that are powerful beings that are ascended masters. They've gone through the wormhole. They're not in the physical anymore. They are no longer powerful in the physical realm. This is the great irony, that once you become this perfected individual, you can't hang around anymore in the place where things need to be perfected. You go to the realm of perfection. So even though this, realm needs the higher ascended masters to be here, they live in a different place. They live in the realm of pure mastery. So it's like saying they're musicians who passed the audition. Their performance was flawless, and they now exist in a realm of flawless musicians. If you're not a good enough musician, you don't pass the audition, you cannot be part of that symphony. And it's because that symphony cannot accommodate false notes or sour notes or people who don't know what they're doing. So we are here in this level of refinement, learning how to be a really good musician, learning how to act at that realm. That's what I talk about when I talk about your debutante ball. When you come out of the third dimension, when you come out of your body, you enter into the larger realm of consciousness. And it is necessary to know, what are the dance steps? What is formal politeness at those higher levels of consciousness? We need to learn those lessons in the physical realm. But death is not the end. That would be like saying that when a teenager, a 16-year-old goes to their debutante ball, that their life is over. Of course that's not what happens. Imagine how a young person growing up would feel if they thought, oh my God, I'm 15, I'm almost going to be 16, and when I'm 16 I have my coming out ball, and then it's the end of everything. What a way to live. That is how Earth's surface humans live within the current socioeconomic and cultural context. People live in fear of death. They say, I'm getting to be 40, I'm getting to be 50, I'm getting to be 60, I'm getting to be 79, I'm getting to be 99, and one day I'm going to die. I'm going to have my coming out party, and that will be the end of everything, and won't that be so horrible? No, it won't be so horrible. It is exactly what is supposed to happen. However, there are all sorts of different ways to die. So dying or making this transition in fear, without preparation, and without the knowledge or will of what you would like to receive next, is to experience it in a very disempowered sense. That's probably why, it is valid to feel fear. If you are put in front of the ocean with a surfboard and no swimming lessons and no training as to how to surf and said, here, go do it, yeah, you're probably going to wipe out pretty hard. It's probably not going to be a good journey. However, it doesn't have to be that way. So right now, I'm presuming that everyone who's listening to this radio broadcast is still corporeal and is alive. You have options. You can learn while you are still in your physical body and make choices so that the transition is a positive transition. And also, let's say that there is no judgment here. Remember, I was speaking about the different levels of attainment. Pure ascension, kindling the body into a pure ball of light, nothing is left behind. Then there is what some ascended masters have done. They have ascended but left behind relics. Padmasambhava did this. And this is important to understand. Padmasambhava was a magical being, born into reality spontaneously, not through physical parents. And Padmasambhava died the physical death. Same thing with the Buddha, Siddhartha. These were physical beings in a historical realm. There's a historical record of them. And they were magical, enlightened beings, and they died. They left behind a body. Why did they do this? Why didn't they just do the ball of light thing? And the answer is, these are the beings that had the highest attainment. And they are showing that you can do that and choose to leave your body behind. So just because you say, look, so-and-so died a seemingly ordinary death, Their body is still here. Therefore, they didn't ascend. They're not a special person. That's baloney. That's why these ascended masters left behind their body. Some ascended masters leave behind relics. They will leave behind a tiny shrunken body, or hair cells, or fingernail cells, or sometimes a skull. Some level of physicality is left behind, and sometimes these relics exhibit magical qualities. They might be uncorruptible in that they do not decompose. They might be self-healing, like some of these skulls of the Far East, where aspirants chipped away at little chips to take home a little piece, and the next morning the skull was healed as if no one had ever chipped away at it. And then, of course, there is the regular death, where the physical body dies, the consciousness leaves, and there is just a rotting, decomposing corpse that is left behind. There's all of these levels and all of the various shades or fractions in between. So it must be understood that levels of attainment, there are different levels of attainment. And not to be judgmental of a person's journey, because when a person dies, like if a person dies a physical death, they leave behind their body, but we understand that their consciousness has shifted into a different realm. And let's say a person dies very suddenly in a car accident. That person's consciousness might not be ready to simply go into a bodiless state. They might still require experiences in a seemingly third-dimensional realm so that they can eventually let go of having a physical body, no longer eat, no longer drink, no longer have bowel movements, and live a different life. So people sometimes die suddenly and go into another realm that looks a lot like the realm that they just left, and is filled with all of the life lessons that they require in order to eventually have a bodiless state. Guess what? We've all experienced that. All of Earth's surface life has already died. This happened about 14 years ago, and we are all within this transitionary realm. You could think of it as a holodeck, like from Star Trek, The Next Generation, a realm of purely mind-created reality that appears to be the realm that we are exiting, the realm of objective materialism, where objects are objects and they follow Newtonian rules of physics and they are not affected by consciousness. For the past 14 years, we have not been in that realm. We have been in a realm that is more and more affected by consciousness. And our bodies respond to consciousness. And matter responds to consciousness. And we are entering into a realm where that will be an instantaneous response. As soon as I think something, the matter around me responds to that thought. And that the moment that that happens, that we enter into that realm, will be birth of a new dimension. We have been experiencing all of the life lessons that we need over the past 14 years as individuals and as a culture, so that we can finally begin to drop the materialism and enter into a realm that is beyond materialism. We're entering into a realm where the material world around us is imbued with consciousness and responds to the spiritual. So no longer is this delineation between the realm of matter and the realm of consciousness, or the realm of matter and the realm of pure spirit. The flying rainbow lasagna itself is the representation of the combination of the realm of pure matter and the realm of pure consciousness coming together. And the flying rainbow lasagna is not just a macroscopic shape at the level of larger reality. It is a level on the subatomic level. It is on the genetic level. It is happening on deep interior levels as well as the macroscopic level. All of this is information to tell you that we don't live in the same realm that we did before the invention of the flying rainbow lasagna. 20th century and 21st century humans up until this point have had almost no training or preparation for death and ascension, and we are about to experience planetary ascension. So, don't have to be afraid. This is a message to anyone. I know people that are in stage 4 cancer, and some of them are afraid and some of them aren't, and some of them go through levels of being afraid. Just like when you're having a psychedelic experience, some aspects of the journey are blissful. Rainbow geometric shapes fly all around you, and some aspects of the journey are like a white knuckle, very concerning, very anxiety-ridden feeling where you're approaching this boundary, and only if you have the willpower to get through that boundary do you see that it was a false boundary. It is the expansion of your consciousness to a level where it says, if I expand beyond this, I'm not going to be the same person that I was before. And if you choose to keep going and keep expanding, it's true. It is a death of the previous person that you were, and a creation and a birth of a new person. So I can tell you from my personal experience in my journey, the person who used to be in this body died. They literally died. It is not a metaphor. And yet, consciousness continues. Death is not the end. I tell you from personal experience. And if you cultivate yourself and you prepare yourself and you make conscious choices, you can control or surf the trajectory of consciousness and go to where you wish to go. This is what's in the handbook, the Book of the Dead, the Book of Coming Forth into Day. It basically says, when you die, do this, don't do this. If you do this, you'll get going in the right direction. If you do this, you'll get stuck on your journey. You will be waylaid. So, of course, it is far too much for me to tell you in this short radio broadcast how to transcend death. It is something like running a marathon. You need to train every day. You don't just wake up and train one day and then run a marathon the next day. So spiritual attainment means you need to train and cultivate yourself every day. And by doing so, when it comes time for your own coming out ball, your own debutante moment, you'll be prepared. And it will be your own special experience, your own special individual magical moment. So I'm going to complete this broadcast on that note because it's a very positive thing to think about. Just like when you were born into this realm, it was a celebration day. When it is time for you to leave this realm, when it is time for you to die, it will similarly be a celebration. Thank you so much for joining me on the journey.